The alien princess said, "I need a husband," and she indicated at MeSci-Fi. The human envoy had never imagined his life would take a turn like this. One moment, he was preparing speeches for a calm interstellar summit. The next, he found himself standing in the center of a grand palace with hundreds of eyes staring at him. The room was enormous. Its walls shimmered with colors that shifted like liquid, and the ceiling seemed to stretch into infinity. He could hear faint echoes of footsteps on the smooth floor, footsteps belonging to creatures of every imaginable shape, color, and size. Some had multiple limbs, some floated in the air, and some had eyes in places humans could not have imagined. The envoy swallowed hard and adjusted the folds of his uniform. He had been chosen not for his skill in combat or diplomacy, but for his calm thinking under pressure. That calm, the council believed, might impress the alien leaders. It had seemed like a small, quiet honor at first. But as he stood in the middle of the chamber, the weight of 100 alien gazes pressing on him, he began to understand how completely unprepared he really was. Then she appeared. The princess of the Celestari Empire entered the room with quiet authority. She did not march or stride. She glided, as if the floor itself carried her forward. Her form was elegant, humanoid but taller than any human he had ever seen, with skin that shimmered like polished silver under the palace lights. Her eyes were a deep violet, glowing faintly, and they seemed to pierce straight into the envoy's mind. Every whisper in the room died the moment she entered. When she spoke, her voice was calm but firm, carrying across the chamber without raising volume. "I will speak once. My empire requires a bonded partner, one who will share my rule and bear my responsibilities. This choice is not ceremonial. It is the law. It must be made in public in front of all witnesses. I have chosen him." Alien leaders shouted, voices overlapping in a deafening cacophony. Some pointed at the human, others at the princess, and a few waved their hands, clearly trying to stop what they thought was madness. But the princess did not move. She waited, her eyes locked on him as though daring anyone to question her. "Her Highness," an elder of the council spoke, his tone shaking, "surely this must be a mistake. A human cannot possibly fulfill." He had expected alien politics, complex treaties, and negotiations over resources. He had not expected to be chosen as the consort of a galactic princess. He felt every heartbeat thundering in his chest. His legs felt like lead and his throat was dry. He wanted to speak, to protest, to say that he was just a human, an observer, not a ruler, but words failed him. The princess studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Prepare yourself. You leave with me now. Your presence is required in my territory. You are not a prisoner, but neither are you free to refuse. The Empire's future depends on your willingness to participate." The envoy followed, dazed, as the princess glided ahead. Outside the chamber, the palace stretched over miles of floating platforms, connected by transparent bridges that revealed the swirling gas clouds of the planet's atmosphere below. The human felt a mix of awe and fear. The world outside was breathtaking, alien in every sense, yet it reminded him how small and fragile humanity seemed in comparison. He was led to a private chamber, luxurious yet minimal. The walls shifted colors softly, and there were no chairs, only platforms that seemed to adjust to his weight. The princess waited for him. She did not speak at first. She simply observed as though measuring his reactions. Finally she spoke, her voice calm, almost conversational. "You look frightened." "Humans are unusual," she said. "Your kind does not rely on strength alone. You have creativity, persistence, and a mind capable of solving problems others cannot. That is why I chose you." "You will be tested," she continued. "The Empire does not bond with weakness. You must prove your worth, not with weapons but with your mind, your courage, and your ability to endure what most cannot. Some will hope for your failure. Others will want to see you succeed. Either way, your actions will shape the perception of humanity for generations." The weight of her words pressed on him. It was not just his life at stake. It was humanity's reputation among the stars. What happens if I fail?" he asked quietly. The princess's eyes hardened. "Failure is not an option if you wish to return home. But understand this, the Empire will not destroy you for failure. It will test you, shape you, and demand that you grow. That is the law." Their law was clear. A leader must have a bonded partner capable of navigating not only diplomacy and governance, but also survival in situations designed to test limits beyond imagination. "You may think this impossible," she said, "but humans are unlike other species. That is why I chose you." Instead, he listened, absorbing every detail about the Empire, its customs, and the expectations that awaited him. The more he learned, the more he realized that he would have to adapt, or risk not only his life but the reputation of his entire species. As the night passed, he tried to sleep, but his mind raced. How would he survive the trials? What would the other alien nobles think of him? Would he be seen as a weak human, or could he find a way to impress a species that had ruled the stars for millennia? Every scenario seemed impossible, yet he understood one undeniable truth. His life had changed forever. The next morning, the princess arrived to escort him to his first trial. She did not speak of danger or fear, only of preparation and observation. The human followed her through corridors that seemed alive, walls shifting to reveal lessons of history and tests of logic. He encountered creatures that challenged his perception, puzzles that demanded patience and creativity, and simulations of natural disasters designed to push limits beyond human imagination. Despite his fear, he discovered moments of strength. He found solutions that the alien instructors did not anticipate. He helped fellow test subjects navigate challenges. He endured discomfort, cold, heat, and unfamiliar gravity, all without complaint. Each step built confidence, not arrogance. Each trial revealed the depth of human ingenuity and endurance. The princess observed silently, occasionally nodding or adjusting the scenario. She never interfered, but her attention was never elsewhere. The human began to understand why she had chosen him. Humans did not rely solely on power or tradition. They adapted. They survived. They considered problems from angles no other species imagined. In a world of calculated precision, unpredictability could be a weapon, and the princess had recognized that instantly. By the end of the first day, the human was exhausted, sore, and overwhelmed. Yet there was a strange satisfaction in his exhaustion. He had survived challenges that would have crushed many others. He had proven, in some small way, that the princess's choice was not foolish. As he lay on the soft, color-shifting platform of his chamber that night, he stared at the ceiling, which mirrored the galaxy outside. Stars twinkled in the distance, galaxies spun in patterns impossible to chart, and he realized how small and fragile humans were in the universe. Yet, for the first time, he also realized how much potential they carried. The princess's words echoed in his mind. "Humans are unusual. That is why I chose you." And for the first time, the human envoy began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could rise to the challenge, and perhaps show the galaxy that humanity, though small and inexperienced, had a place among the stars. The next morning, the human envoy woke with a mixture of excitement and dread. Today would be his first real trial, and the princess had made it clear that nothing in the Empire's history suggested mercy for those unprepared. He dressed quickly, his uniform neatly pressed, and followed the princess through hallways that seemed to breathe, walls shifting softly with light and color. The palace was alive in ways that defied human logic, and he could not help but marvel at the beauty of it all. At the trial chamber, he found other beings waiting, creatures from different species, some with scales, some with wings, and some that seemed made entirely of light. Each had been chosen for their unique abilities, and each carried an air of confidence that made him feel even smaller. The princess stood at the front, her violet eyes scanning the group, finally resting on him. "Your trial begins now," she said. Her voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "This is not a contest of strength. It is a test of intelligence, endurance, and adaptability. You will face challenges designed to stretch your mind and body beyond their normal limits. Remember, every decision you make reflects not just on yourself, but on your species. Do not fail. The human swallowed hard and stepped forward, trying to ignore the eyes of the alien competitors. The first challenge appeared, a puzzle of moving platforms suspended over a glowing chasm. Each platform had a symbol, and only one sequence would allow safe passage. Other species immediately leapt into action, some with multiple limbs grabbing platforms with precision, others using strange energy fields to stabilize their steps. The human hesitated, studying the pattern, feeling his heart pound in his chest. Then he remembered something the princess had said. Humans think differently. Use what you have. He closed his eyes for a moment and visualized the sequence, imagining each symbol in a pattern he could manage. Step by step, he moved across the platforms, pausing to adjust when the symbols shifted unexpectedly. Slowly, carefully, he reached the other side. A few competitors stared at him in disbelief, others ignored him, confident they could finish faster. The next challenge tested endurance. A vast chamber filled with extreme climates awaited. Half the arena was scorching heat, the other half a blizzard that cut through flesh as if it were paper. Competitors were expected to cross the room while carrying objects crucial to the next stage of the trial. Many faltered immediately, unprepared for such extremes. The human felt the heat first, sweat dripping from his brow, clothes sticking to his skin. He pressed on, focusing on breathing and conserving energy. When the cold hit, he wrapped his arms around himself, moving steadily, refusing to let shivers slow him down. Step by step, he adapted, using simple techniques humans often relied on in harsh environments: pacing, focusing on core temperature, and keeping the mind alert. The princess watched silently from her platform, her expression unreadable. Other competitors struggled, some falling behind, some retreating entirely. The human, though exhausted, reached the chamber's center, placing the objects carefully in their designated spots. He looked up and realized that even the princess seemed slightly impressed, a faint nod acknowledging his achievement. The third challenge was psychological, a room designed to mimic the greatest fears of each participant. For some, it was isolation; for others, the loss of control. For the human, the chamber shifted to a familiar place, a quiet human city, empty streets, silence pressing in from all sides. He heard whispers, shadows moving in corners, shapes forming and disappearing. The fear of being alone in a vast galaxy, of being powerless in a world of gods and monsters, pressed on him. He remembered his training, the advice of his teachers, and the stories of humans surviving impossible odds. This is fear. It cannot control me. He took deep breaths, focused on what he could control, and stepped forward. With every step, the illusions faded, revealing the way forward. When he reached the exit, he felt a surge of confidence he had never experienced before. The final test was teamwork. The competitors were forced into groups, each containing members of different species. The objective was simple: navigate a maze filled with traps and obstacles. Yet the maze was alive, shifting, responding to their movements, punishing mistakes immediately. Many teams struggled, unable to coordinate across languages, instincts, and abilities. The humans' group was chaotic at first. One alien tried to dominate the decisions, another refused to move, and a third ignored every instruction. The human spoke calmly, using gestures, basic words, and logic. He suggested roles based on each being's strength and slowly guided the group through the maze. When a wall shifted suddenly, threatening to trap them, he kept calm and found an alternate path. When energy barriers blocked their way, he observed patterns and timed their movements perfectly. By the end, the team reached the center of the maze, exhausted but successful. Other groups had failed or taken far longer. The princess descended to meet them, her eyes focused on the human. She spoke, her voice carrying pride. "You have succeeded in ways I did not expect. You adapt, you endure, and you lead. This is what makes you unusual and valuable. The Empire's expectations were vast, and the galaxy beyond would challenge him even further. As the day ended, he walked the palace corridors with the princess, discussing the trials and what was to come. "You are clever," she said. "Other species would have failed at the psychological test. They would have panicked or retreated. You remained calm and used your mind. That is why I chose you. That makes you dangerous in ways most species cannot comprehend." That night, as he lay on his platform, he reflected on the events of the day. Every challenge had pushed him further than he imagined possible. Every obstacle had taught him more about himself and about the alien world he had entered. Humanity's place in the galaxy was still small, fragile, and uncertain, but perhaps, if humans could continue to adapt and endure, their influence could grow. He thought about the princess, too. Her choice had seemed random, impossible, and overwhelming. Yet her faith in him, however quiet, was a lifeline. She had not chosen him for strength, for cunning, or for fearlessness. She had chosen him because he was human, and perhaps that was enough. He closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had survived the first trials. He had proven, at least to himself, that he could face the impossible. And tomorrow he would face even greater challenges with the eyes of an entire empire upon him. For now he would rest. He would gather strength. He would continue to adapt. And in doing so, he would show the galaxy what humanity was capable of, one step, one trial, one challenge at a time. The days after the trials were quiet on the surface, but heavy with tension beneath. The human envoy could feel it in the way palace officials watched him more closely now, in the way conversations stopped when he entered a room. His success had changed things. He was no longer just a strange guest. He was a variable the Empire had not planned for. The princess remained calm as always, but even she became more alert. She began taking him with her to council meetings, not as decoration, but as an observer. The chambers where these meetings took place were vast and cold, designed to make visitors feel small. High-ranking nobles floated or stood on raised platforms, their eyes sharp, their thoughts hidden behind centuries of tradition. The human stood beside the princess, hands folded, posture respectful. He listened more than he spoke. He watched how alliances formed with small gestures, how silence could mean agreement or threat. Slowly, he began to understand that the empire was not united. It was powerful, yes, but power created fear, and fear created resistance. Some nobles believed the princess's choice weakened tradition. Others feared that a human consort would bring change they could not control. And a few, hidden behind polite words, were planning something far more dangerous, not through open conflict but through influence and manipulation. One council session in particular stood out. A senior noble spoke calmly about revisiting the bonding law, suggesting delays, reviews, and endless procedures. His tone was polite, but his intent was clear. Delay meant doubt. Doubt meant pressure. Pressure could break even a princess. The human noticed the pattern. Each suggestion sounded reasonable alone, but together they formed a trap. He leaned slightly toward the princess and spoke softly, careful not to interrupt. "They are trying to slow you down. If nothing happens, people will lose confidence. It's control through time. You are becoming aware of the deeper game," she said. "This is not something I expected so soon." A group of nobles had formally challenged the bonding. They claimed the human was influencing imperial decisions without authority. They demanded a public review of his role. The challenge was legal, calm, and dangerous. The human felt the weight of it immediately. If the review went poorly, it would not just affect him. It would send a message to the galaxy that humans were not worthy of trust. That they were liabilities. "I can speak," he offered. "I can explain." The human stood alone at the center this time. The princess watched from her platform, her presence steady but distant. This was his moment to either collapse or rise. The lead noble spoke first. "You are human. Your species is young. Why should the Empire trust you with influence over its future?" "You shouldn't trust me because I am human," he said. "You should trust me because I don't pretend to know everything. And when I speak, it is to prevent harm, not to create it." He spoke plainly, honestly, as humans often did when things truly mattered. He spoke of cooperation, of survival, of how humanity learned to live on a fragile world by working together instead of dominating one another. When he finished, there was no applause, just silence. Then the princess stood. "This is why I chose him," she said. "Not for strength, not for fearlessness, but for clarity. He does not seek to rule, he seeks to understand." Measuring trust. The threat dissolved quietly, leaving behind only embarrassment for those who had planned it. The next day, reports reached the outer systems. Other species had observed everything. Not just the trials, not just the review, but the response to internal pressure. Humanity's reputation began to change. They were not loud, they were not aggressive, but they were effective. Later, alone with the princess, the human finally asked the question that had been sitting in his mind since the beginning. "Did you know this would happen? You have influenced an empire without trying to control it. That is rare. That is why this works." And as the empire slowly adjusted to his presence, one truth became clear to all who watched closely. Instead, the Celestari Empire chose calm order. They wanted witnesses, not spectacle. The humans stood in a preparation chamber overlooking the planet below. The sky shimmered with soft colors, and massive cities floated like islands in the clouds. He wore simple ceremonial clothing, designed to be comfortable rather than impressive. That alone told him much about the empire. Power did not need decoration. He took a slow breath. He was still human, still small compared to the forces shaping the galaxy. Yet everything that had happened had brought him here, not by force, not by ambition, but by adaptation. Across the palace, the princess prepared as well. She was calm as always, but her thoughts were deep. She had faced centuries of tradition, internal resistance, and quiet danger. Choosing a human had not been easy. Keeping that choice had been harder, yet she did not regret it. Her people needed balance, not domination. The bonding chamber was open to observers from dozens of species. Representatives watched from elevated platforms, recording every movement, every word. This was not just a union. It was a message. The human entered first and stood at the center. The floor beneath him glowed softly, responding to his presence. When the princess arrived, the room became completely silent. She moved with grace, her expression focused but peaceful. They stood facing each other. The ceremonial speaker began, their voice steady. "This bond is not ownership. It is responsibility. It is not power over others, but duty to them. Those who enter it accept the consequences of change. Not because I seek it, but because I will not run from it." The chamber responded, recognizing balance where it had long seen hierarchy. When the ceremony ended, there was no applause. There was something stronger, respect. In the days that followed, the change was subtle but undeniable. The empire did not suddenly become gentle or weak. It became efficient in a new way. The human did not issue commands. He asked questions. He listened. He noticed when systems created unnecessary pressure, when fear was mistaken for control. Small adjustments were made. Communication improved between species under imperial protection. Trade disputes were resolved through cooperation rather than threat. Decisions slowed slightly, but they became stronger. Other empires noticed. Messages arrived from distant systems, not challenges, invitations. Humanity, once ignored, was now discussed in high councils, not as conquerors, not as servants, but as stabilizers. The human met with representatives from Earth through long-range communication. They were shocked, confused, and deeply cautious. He spoke honestly. "We are not in charge," he told them, "but we are being listened to. That means everything we do matters. We always do. You rely on stability to trade, on trust to expand. We offer both. Refuse us and nothing changes. Accept us and everyone benefits." One evening, standing on a balcony overlooking the stars, the human reflected on everything that had happened. He thought of Earth, of how fragile and stubborn humans were, how often they failed, how often they adapted. The princess joined him, her presence steady. "You have done what many rulers never manage," she said. "You have changed the direction of power without breaking it. A species that did not demand control, yet reshaped systems simply by being present. The human did not see himself as special. He saw himself as typical, and that frightened the galaxy more than any weapon ever could, because if one human could do this. But for a galaxy that had finally learned an important truth,